In this lesson, it's an introduction to ratios and rates. Our learning target is that we will be able to write ratios in different ways so that we can identify and understand ratios in real-world situations. You'll know you've got it when you score at least 85% or better on the assignment following the lesson. So first, we're going to define a ratio. A ratio is basically a comparison between two numbers or quantities. And we have three ways that we can write a ratio. We can write a ratio as a fraction. We can also write a ratio using a colon. And we can also express a ratio just in word form. So if you're looking at a math class, like our math class, we'll just make up some numbers here. We have, let's say, 14 girls to 12 boys. So every 14 girls, there are 12 boys in this class. So we're going to write this ratio in three forms. The first form says girls to boys. This is word form. So that's a word form. So we're going to say, but we're going to replace, because a ratio is comparing numbers, we are going to replace this girls to boys with the numbers. So we're first going to take the ratio and I'm going to abbreviate it. I'm going to just say G to B to help to make sure we rewrite this correctly, because your order matters when you're writing a ratio. If they give it to you, you got to pay attention to the order. Girls was first, so the number 14 needs to come first. So it would be 14 to 12. And then the other way we can write this is the fraction form. And again, I'm going to set up the abbreviated version of the word form as a fraction. It's going to be G on top. Because girls came first, this would be your numerator and boys came second. So this is going to be in the bottom of your fraction, the denominator. So we're going to put 14. Move that over a little bit. 14 over 12. And finally, there's the colon form using a colon. So I'm going to just set up the colon form with abbreviated G to B. The colon replaces the word to. And then the girls has to come first. And the boys has to come second. Now, hopefully when you're seeing this, you're recognizing that, especially in the fraction form, that this fraction is not in lowest terms. So many times we will ask you to put your fraction for your final answer, your ratio, in any of these forms into lowest terms. So even though this isn't written as a fraction, we can reduce it. 14 and 12 have a common factor of 2. So if we divide 14 by 2, it reduces to 7. And if we divide 12 by 2, it reduces to 6. So every 7 girls, there will be 6 boys using this ratio. So that means if we double the girls to 14, we have to double the boys to 12. So these are equivalent ratios. And again, they're in word form, but you can reduce it like you would a fraction. We would divide both of these numbers by 2. And then here we would create that equivalent fraction, divide 14 and 12 by 2, and you would write that fraction in lowest terms. And then the 14 colon, oh, not 2, sorry. Scrap that. Divide by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Sorry, so lowest terms is 7/6. And then 14 divided by 2 is 7. Put your colon in. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So regardless of the form it's in, if you're in the ratio world, ratios are comparisons, and we can reduce those fractions when possible. Now we're going to switch it. So we're going to switch the order, and now we're going to do the ratio boys to girls. So this is all word form, no numbers. It's telling you how to set up the ratio with your numbers. And so we're going to, again, do the same thing. We're going to abbreviate B for boys, the word two for the word form, and then G for girls. So it's B12 now to 14 girls, but that can be reduced, and it's going to be 6 to 7. So it's the reciprocal, it's the flip of the ratio above. Okay, and then we can set up the abbreviated word form for the fraction. We'll be doing a lot of this abbreviated writing when we're setting up our ratios in this unit, so it's something you need to get used to. So boys to girls, now the 12 is on top, the 14 is on the bottom, and that reduces 12 divided by 2 again, 6, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. So we can reduce that. And then B first, colon, G for girls, 12, 14, divide by 2, because they both have a common factor of 2, so we can reduce it to 7 over 6. And finally we have this, this last example here. It says girls to entire class. So we're doing girls to the entire class. Okay, so we're going to go girls, and then I'm going to just say to total for the entire class. Or I'll just say C for class. Okay, so on this one, the girls is 14, and the entire class is adding the girls and boys together. So 12 plus 14 gives you the entire class, which is 26 students. And again, when you look at these, they're both even numbers. So I know for sure it can be reduced by 2. So I'm going to reduce that 14 by 2 to get 7. And then I'm going to reduce 26 by 2 to get 13. All right, and then we're going to go girls to the class. As a fraction, I'm setting up that abbreviated word form. And it's going to be 14 girls to 26 students in the entire class, and that will reduce to 7 girls to 13 students. So every 13 students in a class will have a ratio of 7, a number of 7 girls. Okay, and finally, girls, colon, class. So we're going to reduce, write 14 for the girls, 26 in the entire class, and that means for every 13 students, we have those 7 girls. All right, so looking at these, just another little piece of information to recognize. These two right here, these two ratio setups right here are called part to part, because they're the two pieces that make up an entire class. So each is a part of the class. So we call that a part to part ratio. And then this one right here is called a part to total, because it's only one of the parts that make the whole thing, and we're comparing it to the total. That's why we had to add the two pieces together to get this second part of our ratio. So there are part to part ratios that we're going to be looking at, and then there's the part to total ratios. Okay, we have a picture up here, and it's got stars, clouds, and thunderbolts. So we are going to write ratios. The first ratio we're going to write is how many bolts there are to the clouds. This is a part-to-part ratio. We've got all kinds of objects up here, and we're doing part-to-part. So bolts to clouds. So I'm going to first do for this, and we're going to write it 3 ways. So we'll do the word form first, and then we'll do the fraction, and then we'll do the colon. So word form, fraction, colon. The word form, the first thing I want you to do is set up an abbreviated version of it, B to C, abbreviate those words, and then replace the words, the abbreviated letters with your numbers. So how many bolts are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 bolts, that's going to come first. And how many clouds are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to write their totals right there. So I have them for this. So 8 to 4. And you just want to double check, can that ratio be reduced? It sure can. It has a common factor of 2. They're both even, but it also has a common factor of 4, a bigger one. So ideally you want to divide by the largest common factor, the greatest common factor, which is 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio. For every 2, you can see it here, for every 2 bolts, circle those up on your notes, we have 1 cloud. You see that? So that's what it's saying. You can reduce that. And that means 8 bolts would create 4 clouds. Okay, so the next thing we're going to compare is, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it in fraction form. So B over C. And it's 8 over 4, which equals reduced to 1 in lowest terms. Okay, and finally, we have the colon, bolts, the clouds. So we have 8 to 4, which is 2 to 1 when we reduce it. So pretty easy stuff in terms of just understanding the word ratio. We've already done all this reducing fraction stuff previously, and you've done it in previous grade levels. So hopefully this is not a big deal. We're just writing a word form, a fraction form, and a colon form to express a comparison between 2 different things here. All right, so we have stars. We're going to do stars to clouds. So I'm going to first do word form, stars to clouds. I'm going to set up all 3 here. Set it up with me. Stars, very good habit to get into when you're in ratios, is using the word forms to set your stuff up. And as you get into this unit, we're going to do a lot of that, stars to clouds. And on this one, I'm going to have you pause the video, fill out the ratios, the 3 ratios for this, and then turn the video back on to see if you got those ratios correct. So we have the stars to clouds, 4 to 4, and it reduces 1 to 1. The fraction form, 4 over 4, which reduces 1 to 1. And then stars to clouds, 4 to 4, 1 to 1. You might say, hey, it's 1 to 1, why don't we just write 1? Or it's 2 to 1, why don't we just write 2? Well, we're trying to see both of the objects and what quantities they have in relation to one another. So we want to just leave these ratios as with both numbers. We're not going to reduce this down to just 1 yet. Eventually we will get there, but when we're in this ratio piece right now, we want to see both these quantities, because remember, the definition of a ratio is when you compare 2 quantities. So we want to see these 2 quantities. Okay, on this one, it's clouds to stars and bolts. So I'm going to say, whoops, moving my screen there. Okay, so you're going to want to set up for this the abbreviated word form here. We've got clouds. And it looks like we have 2 things for our second part of our ratio. It's stars and bolts. So set up the abbreviated form so you know what comes first in your word form, what goes in the numerator, and what goes in the denominator. Whoops, keeps grabbing that. Doot, doot. It's stars and bolts in the denominator, clouds in the numerator, because clouds came first. And then for your clouds comes first, then your colon, and then the stars and bolts. So go ahead and write the ratios those 3 ways. We got them set up with word form so you can keep straight where the numbers go. And then double check, see if they need to be put into lowest terms when you're done. If they do, do that. And then turn the video back on to see if you figured this ratio, expressing ratios 3 ways out. All right, so you should have noticed there are 4 clouds, 2. Well, we have stars and bolts. You've got to know that you have to add those two amounts together. 4 plus 8 is 12, so it's 4 to 12. So we end up with a 1 to 3 ratio when we reduce it. They have a common factor of 2, 4 and 12 are both even, but they also have a bigger common factor, which is 4. So if you can recognize that, you would divide it by 4 and be done in one step. So 4 divided by, 4 is 1, 12 divided by 4 is 3. And that should set up for our fraction then, 4 over 12 equals 1 over 3. And then finally, 4 colon 12 is 1 to 3. So you can see that ratio right here. Here's our 1 cloud. Here's our 3, a star and 2 bolts. Here's our 1 cloud. Here's 3 shapes, a star and 2 bolts. Here's our 1 cloud with a star and 2 bolts. And here's our 1 cloud with 3 shapes, 1 to 3, a star and 2 bolts. So we have 4 groups. That's why we divided by 4 here. And we end up with 1 cloud compared to 3 shapes, a star and 2 bolts in every picture there. So it shows you how come we can lump them all together and say it's 4 to 12. And how come we can reduce it? That means if it works 4 to 12, for every 1 cloud, we have 3 figures, 1 star and 2 bolts, 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 3 figures. So you can see how that reducing works for these ratios. All right, example 3, we're going to write 2 ratios as fractions for making a certain shade of purple paint. And the paint we're going to do the part-to-part ratios. There's 2 of them in this problem. And then we're going to show a part-to-total ratio so you can see how that works. So we're going to start with the part-to-part. And we have 2 colors. So I'm going to circle what we've got here. We've got the red paint and we've got blue paint. And when you mix red and blue, you should get purple. Now, how much blue you put in or how much red you put in will determine how the shade of purple you're going to get. Okay, so we'll start with the part-to-part. We're going to start with the ratio, I guess, because I have my blue up here. We'll do blue to, and we're going to write these as fractions, only one way. Okay, so we're just going to do blue to red first. That's one way to write the part-to-part. And the other way to write the part-to-part is to do red to blue, is to reverse it. So when you're writing ratios, there's 2 ways to express them. If you're not told how to express it and you're given a problem, you have to read the problem and understand which way they want you to express the ratio. Okay, so we have 3 blue, 3 parts blue, so the blue would go in the top there. In my second ratio, it would go in the bottom. And then we have 2 parts red. So we're adding more blue to this shade than we are red. And the 2 would go in the top here for my fraction. So it's a ratio that we can describe 2 ways when it's part-to-part. It's either 3 over 2 or 2 over 3. And then if we're going to do a part-to-total ratio, we would describe just one of the parts. So we're going to do this 2 ways. We're going to do blue to total. And I'm going to use T for total. Or the other part to total would be your red compared to the total. So it just depends on the problem and what they're looking for, what they're trying to figure out. So blue to total is simply 3. And your total amount is going to be your 2 plus 3. We add the 2 parts that were given to get the whole thing. And 2 plus 3 is 5. So I'm just going to say 2 plus 3 here. You add your 2 parts together to get that total. And then the red, we're just going to take our red value. They say, hey, it's 2 parts red to the total. And again, the total is just the 2 plus 3 added together. Very simple, 2 to 5. So just recognizing and understanding, sometimes we're finding parts against the other parts, and other times we're comparing parts against the whole thing. Okay, recipes. When you're making recipes and cutting them in half, or doubling them or tripling them, that sometimes you need to deal with ratio world, because you have to make sure that everything you're putting in gets doubled or tripled or cut in half so that it tastes right. If you're making cookies and you're putting in supposed to be a cup of sugar and you're going to double it, you double everything, but you don't double the sugar, they're not going to be as sweet as the regular batch. So here's Toll House cookies. It says you need 4 cups of flour to every 2 eggs. So part to part, again, I'm going to write this as flours to eggs. And I'm going to flip it to get my other part to part. Compare the eggs to the flours. How many eggs are you going to put in every time you put in 4 in your flour? Well, it says, hey, you got 4 cups of flour for every 2 eggs. Okay, and I'm writing these as fractions. That means we're going to reduce that. For every time you add 2 cups of flour, you have to add an egg to make it taste right. So if you have 4 cups of flour, you have to add 2 eggs. If you have 8 cups of flour, you have to add 4 eggs. So there's a ratio, and they come in handy when recipes. All right, the other way you could consider it is you could say every time I add 2 eggs, I need to add 4 cups of flour. That means every time I add 1 egg, I'm adding 2 cups of flour. Okay, so if you are making a recipe, these ratios come in handy to know how to scale up a recipe or cut it down so it still tastes good. Okay, just a reminder, a ratio is a comparison of 2 quantities. Ratio words, we've mainly used the word to in our last round, but sometimes you'll see out of as your ratio word, or for every as a ratio word. And remember, there's 3 ways. You got your word form, you got your fraction form, and you've got your colon form. So now we're going to advance on. We're going to talk about a ratio, and this ratio is called a rate. A rate is a ratio that has 2 different units. Oops. So units is what we are comparing. So we know exactly what we're comparing. So units would be like miles, minutes, pounds, dollar signs for money. It could be units like centimeters, kilograms. So when I say units, it's what are we actually comparing in a real world scenario. So there's meaning to the numbers or the quantities you're comparing. Okay. So when we see speed, it compares 2 things, 2 different things. It's comparing your distance, your miles per se, to how many hours you drove. If you have a typing speed, you are working on trying to get faster at your typing. Your typing speed is typically described by how many words you can type in so many minutes. And then costs, how much something costs per pound, by the pound. So if you go to the bulk store for candy, you'll see tags that tell you how much it costs for pounds that you want to purchase. If you have any kind of job like babysitting, you typically will charge by the hour. How much money is it going to cost them by the a number of hours, to the number of hours they're gone, how long you're babysitting for. If you cut grass, you might charge by the lawn, how many lawns you're cutting. So you get money paid on how many lawns you've cut. So, or you might charge by how large the yard is. Okay, and then measurement conversions, when we have centimeters and we want to know how many inches that is. When we have pounds and we want to change those over to kilograms, and then quarts over to liters, those conversions are rates. And there's special ways we handle those conversions and these common rates. Okay, so just a reminder, a ratio, a rate right here, a rate is a ratio that has 2 different units. We went through the different ways. We got speeds, unit cost, wages, and measurement conversions are very common uses for rates. And then we have this special term called a unit rate. So this is important vocabulary: ratio, rate, and unit rate. A unit rate is a rate where the denominator is a 1. So unit rate words: per, to, for, every, and each. It implies that there's 1. So when we're looking at common rates and unit rates, here's how a unit rate would look. Miles per 1 hour. As a fraction, it would be miles over 1 hour. So this is word form here, and this is fraction form. Words per 1 minute. Words, and then your fraction bar is like the word per. Words per 1 minute, or words for every minute. So those are ways to translate. Dollars per 1 pound. Okay, so this is speeds right here. Speed. This is a unit cost or unit price. And this would be like a wage, possibly, how much you get paid by the hour, how much money for 1 hour, how much money for each hour. And then this is conversions, converting measurements. And it's centimeters for 1 inch. How many centimeters for every inch? So we're going to practice how we need to show our steps. These are steps. You're going to be required to show them to help us get into the mode of calculating unit rates. And there are shortcuts to finding a unit rate, but we're not using the shortcut yet. We are going to show specific work on how you're getting your unit rates. So the start off typing speed, that is a rate. It's a rate because it compares two different units. And I want you to circle the two different units we're comparing here. We're comparing the units is the word words and minutes. When I say units, that's what I mean. Another way to say units here is labels. So circle what we're comparing. What are the two different things we're comparing? We're comparing how many words to how many minutes. So circle those, and then I want you to write the abbreviated form of that over on this far left side here, words to minutes. And I'm using W and M, just abbreviate it. Okay, once you have it abbreviated, and this is the steps that you're going to show on your homework. When it says required work, this is what I'm talking about. So we have words over minutes, and now we're going to plug in the numbers they gave us. How many words did they give us? 195. That is going to go on top of we're trying to find the unit rate. In other words, we're trying to find how many words they type in 1 minute. 1 minute. So I know they type 195 words in 3 minutes. So I'm setting up my ratio and I'm using this order to it. Okay, and then we're going to say, hey, we want to know for a unit rate, 1 minute. Remember, a unit rate has a 1 in the denominator. It means out of 1 for every 1. So we're going to set up the ratio, the fraction, in this form. And then we're just going to use a W up top here. So we know we're trying to figure this number out. How many words, instead of in 3 minutes, we're trying to find out how many words in 1 minute. How many words in 1 minute? Okay, so this is the thought process. When we're doing these, we've done these before, just creating an equivalent fraction. So we are going to reduce this fraction to create a 1 down here. To make a 3 a 1, we divide by 3. We're scaling it down to 1. You have to divide that by 3. To keep the fraction equal, we simply divide the top by the same amount. So the goal of a unit rate is to get that 1 in the bottom. And we can do that simply by dividing the number by itself. And then that will give us this number right here. Oh, I had the pencil. That would give us this number right here, which is 65. So step one is to circle the units that you're setting up your rate for. Then write the step two is to set up the abbreviated word form. Step three, put your numbers in for those two word forms. Replace the letters with numbers. We're going to leave units out of this. Step four, set up your unit rate with a variable out of 1. And then step 5, reduce it. Divide the denominator by itself, divide the numerator by the same amount, and then you get your result. And then the word form is taking what you found right here and putting the units back in. So it's 65 words per, you could say per 1 minute, or you could leave the 1 out. It's implied per minute. And we're writing it all out, no abbreviations here. So when you're in your formative tonight, working on the assignment, this is the work I expect to see. Even if you know a shortcut, this is required. Circle, word form, set up the rate, set up your reduced rate, and then find that missing number, and then word form. Okay, so gas mileage. It's 252 miles for 12 gallons of gas. All right, so this is trying to figure out how far your car can go on 1 gallon of gas. So we're trying to figure out how many miles, I'm going to abbreviate it, for 1 gallon. I'll put the word for in there. 1 gallon of gas. Abbreviate that, okay? So that's what we're trying to find. You don't have to write that out. I'm just trying to make sure you understand what this gas mileage means. So step 1, circle your units. We've got miles and we've got gallons. Write the abbreviated version over here. I'm just using M for miles and G for gallons. Then set the numbers up according to your fraction, miles and gallons. 252 over 12. And we're trying to figure out how many gallons, or how many miles, M, we can go on 1 gallon. A unit rate has a 1 down here. So we just set up this equivalent fraction. Another name for this is called a proportion. So we set up a proportion or equivalent fraction where we're reducing the 12 to a 1. To reduce 12 to 1, we simply divide it by itself. And when we divide 252 by 12, we get 21. So that equals 21. And I'm going to stick my units back in here. It's miles here. Miles, it's plural. There's 21 miles to 1 gallon. Gallon is singular. 1 is singular. So, and then we're going to just put the word form in right here. We're not going to abbreviate this word form. Let me get that smaller. We're not going to abbreviate it. So it is 21 miles per 1 gallon. Again, the 1 is optional here. You will see you can put it in just to be very clear that that's your 1 in your bottom. Or you could just say 21 miles per gallon. The 1 is implied. All right, so you're going to try these two. We have Jake rode for 40 miles in 4 hours. What was his speed per hour? All right, so you're going to just do this one. And remember, you need to circle the units that we're comparing. You need to write the word form for the units first. Then you need to be able to set up the numbers to replace the abbreviated word form. Then you need to set up the unit rate. And once you get it set up, you need to figure out the missing value and then write it in word form down here. When you're done, turn the video back on to see how you did. All right, so you should have circled miles and hours. If you didn't circle those, you needed to. That's part of the required setup. This is super important. We're setting the stage for a lot of the concepts we're going to cover later on in this unit. So these are steps that you need to have in your head, how to organize. And then over here, you should have M over H for your ratio, your rate, in abbreviated form. You may not have picked these letters, but you should have abbreviated miles and hours somehow. That's what I chose. And then you replaced your letter form with the actual quantities, the numbers that we're using for our rate, which is 40 and 4. No units here. Leave the units out. And then you should have set up M over 1 with your equal sign in between. So 40 over 4 equals M over 1. Then you needed to reduce. You needed to figure out what to divide 4 by to get 1. Well, you always divide it by itself in the bottom to get that unit rate. And whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top to keep the fraction equivalent. And 40 divided by 4 is 10. And so you've got 10 here. You figured this out right here. So you need to replace or say that M is 10, and then we put our units back on it, and that will help us to translate it into a word form. 10 miles per 1 hour, or you could have had 10 miles per hour. Okay, so that is how these work. Now you might say, Ms. Vandenberg, I looked at that and I knew it was 10 miles per hour. Why do I have to do all this? Because the numbers eventually are not going to be that simple. We're doing basic ones here to get the process of how to handle setting up rates and getting them down to their unit rates. So when they're more complicated, you have a process that you can use, and it'll help keep you organized and straight and get to those correct answers when you're not sure exactly how it's going to fall out. This will guide you all the way through your problem. So it's required on even the easy ones. Okay, water goes over Niagara Falls at a rate of 180 million feet cubed every 30 minutes. This is a volume measure. So you can kind of picture maybe a plastic box that's 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, and it's full of water. 180 million of these boxes. Okay, almost impossible to imagine. Just imagine Niagara Falls, and that'll tell you that's how much water falls every 30 minutes. So we want to know how much water goes over the falls each minute. That's one of those unit rate words. When you see each, per, you're for every, you know you're looking for a unit rate, okay? So we're going to circle our units. There they are. You need to set up the word form, then set up the number form. You're going to need some room because that's a big number. Shouldn't need to be as big on this second part, and your 1 in the bottom here. So set this up, and then in word form, find your answer, turn the video back on to see if you got it. We're trying to figure out how much water goes over Niagara Falls every minute. All right, so you should have had the F over M, or whatever letters you chose for the feet cubed and the minutes. And that is our abbreviated word form, which is required to have. And then you replace the abbreviated letters with the quantities that go there, the numbers for those letters, 180 million to 30. And then you have to reduce. So reducing, forgot to write that, reducing 30 to get 1. Whoops, it's not like that. Okay, reducing 30 to get 1, you had to divide by itself. That's what always happens when we're getting that unit rate. We divide by the denominator in the top and the bottom, and that gives us that we have 180 million divided by 30 is 6 million feet cubed. So I have my F here, and I now know it's 6 million feet cubed. I put my units back on the fraction, so it hopefully translates to word form as 6 million feet. Here's your fraction bar, feet per 1 minute. Again, the 1, you do not need to have it here. You could leave it off if you wanted. It's implied. 6 million feet per minute means per 1 minute. Okay, we're in our final example, and we have two people, and they are both swim teachers. So we've got Gina, and she charges $28 for 3 hours of swimming lessons, and Jesse charges $18 for 2 hours of swimming lessons. Which instructor offers the better deal? Okay, by better deal, we mean which one charges less per hour, okay? So looking at these, we have a $28 for 3 hours. So we're comparing dollars, circle that up, and hours. The other one charges $18 for 2 hours. So our units that we're comparing is money and time. So we're going to come over here and set up two problems here for these. First, we've got to compare these, since we don't have a common denominator, that this is 3 and this is 2. We can't just look at the 28 and the 18. We have to find out the unit rate. The unit rate is the easiest way to make a comparison when they are not, when their denominators are different and their numerators are also different. So we have money, our rate that we're going to set up to get started is money to hours for both. So we're going to just set those up. You've got Gina and Jesse, dollars to hours. So we're doing the abbreviated form just like we did in the previous problem. So when you're asked to figure out a comparison here, you're going to do the same thing. You just have to do it twice. One for one person, one for the other. Find the unit rates. Okay, so we know that Gina charges $28. And that's over the course of 3 hours. So set up the rate for that. Set up the rate for Jesse over here. Jesse charges $18 for 2 hours. Okay, and now to compare these, to make an easy comparison, find the unit rates. Put that one down there. I'm going to put D for dollars. Put a 1 down here and D for dollars. I'm going to use a variable instead of the money symbol. And now I want you to pause the video and find each instructor's unit rate, and then write it in word form down here when you're done for both. And then turn the video back on to make sure you've got the correct unit rates. Okay, so you should have found that Gina charges $9.33 per hour. It came out a repeating decimal, but money only goes to the pennies place, so you need to round that off to the nearest penny. We're not going to put the repeating bar over in our answer when it's money because there's no coin past the pennies. So we're going to leave it as $9.33 per hour. And then Jesse charges $9 an hour. So, when you look at these, who has the better rate? It would be Jesse, because she charges less an hour. So not by much, but you save 33 cents an hour with Jesse. So I want you to write a sentence or two, which is an explanation on who offers the better deal. And you are required to use the unit rates in your explanation. So when you're explaining it, you can't just say Jesse has the better deal. You got to justify it by explaining these unit rates in your answer. So pause the video, make sure you use proper math terms. You're talking about unit rates, so you want to say something with a unit cost or unit rate. Those math terms, that vocabulary needs to be in your sentence. So pause the video and write your sentence. Turn it back on to see how you did when you're done. Okay, so I have an explanation that I came up with, and it said a complete sentence, but I took 2 sentences here. You can think of kind of your ACEs that you've been learning about for writing paragraphs, and in this case, this is just an answer to a prompt. So it's not necessarily a full-blown paragraph, it's just a couple of sentences to answer a prompt. But it does offer hey, first thing you need to do is just answer the question. And it asks who has the best deal. So I answered the question. Jesse offers the better deal. Okay, you can't stop there because it says to justify your decision. How come you said that? So our C is going to be just citing what we found. We found that Jesse's hourly rate, I'm citing my amount, $9 an hour, where Gina's hourly rate is $9.33 per hour. Hourly rate is a good math term here for what we're doing. We're comparing rates. So I would expect that you're going to have that in there. I would expect you're going to have units, dollars, and hours. And since it's a rate per, so those are math terms that I would expect to be in your paragraph. So I cited things, and then I explained a little further. I didn't just stop there. I said, as you can see, Jesse charges 33 cents less per hour than Gina. So I went even a little more specific. May not have said that part, but it's something you can see in the math. So it wouldn't hurt to say, how good a deal is it? It's 33 cents an hour deal. It's not by much, but it is a deal. All right. That's it. So you're going to go work on your assignment. Keep these notes handy. Remember what's required of you when you are asked to find unit rates and you're comparing rates. The work that we've modeled in the notes is required in your assignment. And again, even if you can do some of these in your head, the whole point is not that you can't do it in your head. The point is that you know how to set up to show rates and unit rates, and then how to determine those unit rates by dividing by that denominator here to create the ones. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. That's the process I want to see on your assignments. Good luck.